the first to know Nsem-Pii TV.
For Honorable Kojo Oppong Nkrumah, Member of Parliament for Oppong and one of the biggest platforms to say, in fact, and some of the two editor John Dramani Mahama and Nsem-Pii na ene Doma ajebre enyabotre eti Honorable Kojo Oppong Nkrumah enye Nsem-Pii na nenseba o kanu efa say 2026 budget case ato forcing the finance minister presenting our parliament last month no enyeme bi ajira wom na omo mighty minority no omo nyabotre apensempensemu de aba bonten de kire Ghana for say na aban no adada yen adada oman Ghana nyina de aba power o sisi ye hwa NDC for eka kire say omo ba there are some taxes be any levies be omo ba omba be nyina de free na oma dwen nyina ne say omo ye free ho ama oman no revenue no increase na omo nim se omo ye free ho a ebesan ateso kura je se be reduce kura na ene Honorable Kojo Oppong Nkrumah eka revenue factor na ewie no ana kan say very soon Ghana for be realize say 24-hour economy na aban ye tisui John Dramani Mahama de eto o man tirim no omo de daadae na in fact ene Honorable Kojo Oppong Nkrumah course platform no so no or the documents kesiesi bafo ana akwakoto ho ana wo biemu left and right kire Ghana for say na John Dramani Mahama afa adada o man no na in fact make asanche yenye bre nti ensema Honorable Kojo Oppong Nkrumah edi tudwa ene anope.
Okay. Now, if you look at even the big push that they are claiming is supposed to be this thing that will transform jobs, I can tell you on authority that they are beginning to cook the data on the big push. It's in the budget.
Cook the data.
They are fabricating data. When did they launch the big push? On the 16th of September. If you go into the appendices in the budget, and we in the mighty minority spend a lot of time going through the details. If you go into the appendices in the budget, appendix 2C, for example, you will find that they are cooking the books on the big push. If you look at, I don't know if your producers can find it and project it, but if you look at the data, they said they were going to spend 21 billion Ghana cedis on domestic financed infrastructure or capital expenditure, out of and then an extra 13 billion on the big push.
Okay.
Now that's 21. The argument essentially was that they were going to spend 7 billion on the old contractors, nothing on big push on the old contractors. That was the original budget.
Okay.
Then they were going to spend 13 on the big push, 13 billion on the big push.
Right.
Now, between quarter 1 and quarter 3, they have programmed that they will spend 9 billion on the big push. They claim they have spent 10 billion as at the end of September.
Okay.
They launched Big Push on the 16th of September. How could you have paid between 16th of September and the end of Q3 10 billion Ghana cedis? What they were doing was that they were paying old contractors, but fabricating that they were paying for Big Push.
Okay.
In fact, if you go into the upper levels of the data, under the domestic finance where they said they will not pay any of the old contractors, they are now saying that they will pay the old contractors 3 billion when old contractors were in their original contemplation of Big Push were not supposed to be part of it. What is even worse, as at quarter 3, they have paid out of the mineral royalties flows, they have paid about 5 billion cedis.
Right.
This is what they are reporting now that they have paid. They are claiming that by the end of the year, the 5 billion, and Titi, please listen to this, the 5 billion that they have paid, it will reduce to 4.1. How do you reduce money you have paid already?
Right.
They are cooking the books even on the big push. And the fundamental issue that this government is having is similar to an issue that we had in 2017, where you remove some of the taxes, believing that it will increase revenue, and then you can fulfill your promises. And the reality is that after you remove those taxes, the data will show you that the revenue has actually dropped. In fact, I came to you with a copy of ISES.
Yes, because you have made the point that the revenues that they said that about 6 of them that they had removed, the taxes, the emissions, the COVID, the 1.5 withholding gold exports, the e-levy, that's nothing to shoring up revenue and building a bulletproof economy.
But that's nothing. Again, if you go back to the numbers that they themselves presented, Appendix 2B, you will find that at the time we were leaving power, the non-tax revenue as a percentage of GDP was 16.2%.
Okay.
Today, after they removed the taxes that they advertised or remove, and remember they said they won't introduce new taxes.
Yes.
They've introduced 8 new taxes.
Where are they?
I'll go through it with you.
Okay.
But after introducing 8 new taxes and removing those
6
well, not all those 6 were even being collected. Emissions and the rest were not being collected. After removing those taxes, non-oil tax to GDP ratio. In fact, the non-tax revenue is now dropped to 11% of GDP. We've lost about 5% of GDP. Today's GDP is 1 trillion cedis. If you multiply that, that's about 50 billion Ghana cedis, which they've lost. That is why they don't have the money to spend. But they cover it with the propaganda that, it's fiscal discipline, it's fiscal discipline. Nemo that non-quad habit. You can't spend what you don't have.
When they start to spend, that's when you feel that they hit with.
It's not that when you start to spend, that's when you will feel the shortfalls. You can't spend what you don't have.
Okay.
If you're forced to spend, what you may have to do is that you may have to borrow, which became part of our problem.
What do they say is their way of raising revenue to take place of the ones that they have abolished?
So you will recall that at the beginning of the year, when the finance minister advertised that he was going to reduce or remove those taxes, and that he was going to move tax to GDP ratio from 13% to 18%. I was the one who seconded it on the floor of Parliament that if he's able to do that, we'll support him. I'm showing you data right now that it is actually dropping, and that they are not able to mobilize the resources they need to be able to even fulfill their obligations. That's why all the promises that they've made, by the time you hear they say they've launched it, when you say they should bring the program documents to Parliament.
Yes, we have talked about not having the policy documents in Parliament to scrutinize it.
Because, you see, it is those policy documents that will then help us to follow the details, what are the KPIs, and then all of us can see. This is a copy of ESE's publication on the impact of our removal of the taxes.
Right.
2016, 19.4%. When we removed those taxes, thinking that we were going to get more revenue, we called it the nuisance taxes.
Right.
It dropped to as low as about 15% of GDP. After the pandemic, we had to then try and introduce some new taxes to try and take it back up. That's how come we go back up to 16.2% of GDP.
Right.
And now that they came in and they came with these measures, they've already dropped to about 11. It's not hatred or partisanship, but if we will stop the the politicization and pay attention to the data, we'll find out that we're doing ourselves a lot of harm. So their fundamental problem is that they've played politics with the revenue measures. They are not able to mobilize the resources, and that's why they are not able to fund all the things that they've been talking about.
And I say again that it's a year of the government, and you don't anticipate that they'll be able to shore up revenue to be able to roll out these policies. Like they're already distributing the checks for the Oppong.
They launched, first of all, Oppong was budgeted in the 2025 budget. They didn't do anything about it. One day to the reading of the 2026 budget, then they launched Oppong. How much productivity has gone into it? How much work has gone into it? How much has been spent on it? But what you need are credible revenue measures, which will then yield the resources you are looking for, so that you can spend. I keep telling you, this government does so much propaganda with the data. If you don't look into it, you will believe them. For example, you recall they told the people of Ghana that we didn't leave them any buffers. We left them 11 billion Ghana cedis. The Controller and Accountant General has published it in the all of government accounts for the year 2024. As at the end of the year, that balance was forward of 11 billion cedis. Where did they get it from? But you may believe them, and that is why, for example, if you look at their financing program for this year, they are having to borrow by about 13 billion less because they inherited 11 billion, so they don't need to borrow that money. But listen, in all honesty, if we will stop the partisanship and pay attention to the data, we'll then be able to pay attention to some of the structural issues with the Ghanaian economy, which we have to fix. If we don't do that, okay, you are promising the young people 800,000 jobs. 500,000 of them already, as we are finding out, are going to be labor at construction sites for your big push project, which you say is about 3 years or so. So to the many young people out there, where are the quality lasting jobs that they are looking for? Another 250,000, you say you're going to employ them in the oil palm planting, etc. The young people of this country, okay, are looking for sustainable, well-paying jobs that they can rely on. Okay. If we keep playing this game with it over a period, the problem will get worse. The unemployment situation will get worse. And that is the basis on which we keep drawing their attention to these hard numbers. Let's stop the dancing, paying attention to these numbers.
And we've talked about the recommendations that the IMF has made about them, you know, using the Bank of Ghana for, you know, revenue stability and all of that. You know,
at the beginning of the year, they were doing something we started doing at the end of 2024. In fact, let me take you back even further. When COVID hit us, and when you say, they say, oh, don't say COVID, don't say COVID, but it's a fact. What COVID did was that growth which we left at 5.7. By the way, we inherited growth at 3.5. Right. We brought it up to about average 7% in the first 4 years. Then we were hit by COVID. Growth dropped to 0.9%. Now, once an economy is not growing, the government won't get revenue. So government was not getting revenue. Exports were down. Once you are not exporting, you won't get foreign exchange. Right. Okay. So we had to then resort to spending the little foreign exchange that we had. And over a period when the foreign exchange ran out, the currency started depreciating because the economy was then yet to pick up. We then had to go to the IMF for a balance of payment support program to get a show up of forex. Around the same time, we introduced a gold purchase program aimed at using CDs to buy gold, convert that gold into forex, and earn more forex to stop the depreciation of the currency. The gold for oil. Now you will recall, no, it was a gold purchase program. Okay. It was later that we then realized that we could have to even buy oil. Then we don't have to come and take the forex. So then we added the gold for oil program as another layer. Now, the currency depreciated to about 17% somewhere in 2024. I mean, to about 17 to the dollar somewhere in 2024. But by the time we started the market intermediation, because we have been able to mobilize a bit more forex, we were able to bring it down to about 14.1 or so by the time we were leaving office on the 7th of January. Sometimes you hear them doing their propaganda on the floor that when you were leaving it was 70, it wasn't 70, they have come to 14. Just be honest with the facts. Okay, but here's the point. That market intermediation is supposed to be a temporary measure while the market gets back on its feet. The government has now turned it into a permanent measure because they found a window where we can earn forex. And so the actual market measures that are supposed to sustain the currency, they've abandoned it, and all they are doing is that they are pumping. Now, initially when we said that they were pumping, they literally looked Ghanaians in the face and lied to us that it's not true. The governor told us that it's not true. The president told us that it was good leadership when the bishops went to ask him about it. The IMF then paid attention to the data and realized that you are doing intermediation. And the IMF told them that they needed to bring a framework. When they asked them to stop, you all saw the currency depreciating again. It means that the problem has not been fixed. Those are the structural issues I'm talking about. How long do you anticipate they're going to try to do this to keep the CD stabilized? Today you are able to do it because gold prices, unlike 2021 when we introduced the gold purchase program, gold prices today are at about $4,000 an ounce. Okay. So today you are able to get windfall and intermediate. But if you get excited by the windfall and intermediation and you don't pay attention to dealing with the structural issues, let me show you something. Our import balance at the end of October was about $14 billion. The year before it was about $12 billion same time. That means our import bill is going up. So if we have a balance of trade surplus and we are doing well to get the balance of payment to align with balance of trade, then we should be getting close to about $14 billion coming in. Then it will match. The currency will not depreciate. Okay. If you don't pay attention to that one to deal with it, and what you are doing is that now you are dumping. You've dumped about 8 billion of our reserves on the market. That means that if government was not intervening, what would the situation be? You haven't fixed the problem. And this is what we've done as, you know, governments from 2001. At least I started paying attention to the economic data from 2001. And that's why we keep making the point that, listen, we have a fantastic window now to fix it structurally. If you don't want to do it and you want to dance and just, keep...
Well, because people are also wondering why you are advising the government to do these things.
Yeah.
When you definitely should have been in power if you had done these things that you
recommend. Let's explain to you the problems we had and when we started intermediation. And the fact that intermediation is supposed to be a temporary measure while you deal with the permanent things.
Okay.
Why we are drawing their attention is that they appear, and they are actually saying that there's nothing wrong with it, they appear to think that intermediation is the permanent solution. And so having learned from our mistakes, we are drawing their attention that, be careful, because if you are not careful, when you are hit by one shock, or if gold prices go back to where they are, where are you going to get the dollars to intermediate on the market?
On what basis is the finance minister to force an adamant on this?
They believe that the gold purchase program, which we introduced, and now that they've converted the PMMC into the gold board, will continue to yield all of that forex. But we are telling them that, we put the framework in place. We are telling them that gold prices are a factor. Today the prices are $4,000. The same gold is selling at $4,000 per ounce when it was selling at $1,700 earlier.
Okay.
And the reason for which gold prices are rising, your business desk can check and tell you. There are a lot of global uncertainties, so a lot of investors are shifting to gold. Central banks are buying gold to, show up. That's why demand has gone up, and because supply hasn't been commensurate, the price has gone up. It won't be there forever.
Right.
So we say this from a good place. That listen, pay attention, and let's deal with the fundamental issues. Right. If you don't, so for example, these taxes that I'm showing you about, learn from our mistakes. If we remove taxes in 2017, call them nuisance taxes, and revenue to GDP dropped this much, and you couldn't fund some of your interventions, and you then had to go back on your word to go and borrow from places that you said you borrow. Why do you want to repeat the same thing and then say that we should clap for you about it? We have a responsibility to draw your attention so that you don't repeat the same mistakes.
You criticize government's plan to purchase the 2 jets, the presidential jets as well, and you said that the fiscal priorities must be clear.
Yeah.
Why?
So the point we are making is this: we have had a difficult economic period, and in this difficult economic period we've had to take painful steps to get this economy back on a certain level so that it can breathe again.
Right.
When you start having room to breathe, and you have human quality problems like healthcare that has not been addressed adequately, you have unemployment challenges that has not been addressed adequately, you have major infrastructure gaps that need to be dealt with. Respectfully, I don't think that your priority number one should be the comfort of the president, that we are going to buy 2 executive jets. And I mean, no matter how they dance about it, it is becoming palpably clear.
Was that not what you sought to do in government as a priority? But then they kept hounding you because the president was using a private jet as against using the one that has structural defects.
The presidential jet had defects, had gone for repairs.
Right.
And similar to what President Mahama had done in his first term, traveling in rented jets, President Akufo had also traveled in rented jets. The difference is that we did not seek to politicize it when President Mahama traveled on the Vista jets in his first term. The photos are online when he was coming back from Scotland, etc. When you check the photos, you see it there clearly, Vista jets. We did not politicize it. I keep telling you that what our friends on the other side do is that they do politics with everything. So they made major political capital out of it. So now when they come back to power and they realize that contrary to what they said about the presidential jet, that jet is not in pristine condition, it still has to go for repairs, etc. They are now caught in their own trap. The same people who were now, Honorable Ablakwa, who was at the time like a senior aviation official going on and on about the presidential jet, now he was the one after the unfortunate helicopter crash that he's not an expert in the area. Let the experts talk about it. Where's the integrity?
You could have bought the jet
because
that is not the other one had a problem.
That is not the point. It had a challenge. It went for repairs. It came back. There were times it had challenges. It went again. It came back. Same thing has happened now. But the point is this: the very people who opposed any conversation about it are now the ones who want to buy 2 jets at this time when you are looking to deal with unemployment, you are looking to do with infrastructure gaps, you are looking to do with healthcare which is not being repaired. So it is their own propaganda that has caught up with them. For me, as I've said over and over again, the political class in this country needs to realize that some of the things that we do partisan politics with deliver no long-term value to the people of Ghana. The earlier we can build consensus on some of those things and focus on the key structural issues, the better. Again, I go back to the conversation that they were having here. And I was very disappointed to hear my colleague talking about, Zipline. That, Zipline was so bad. Zipline was...
Because we are faced with this scandal of $88,000 being paid to each center.
How do you know that what the minister is saying is true? I'm deliberately asking this question.
Right.
There's a pattern that this government has developed. Everything done by the MPP administration, give it a bad name and throw it away. They did it to... Even if it serves the intended purpose. They did it to 1D1.
The Barakin goals for the Ghanaian people.
They did it to 1D1F. I just told you about how they came to power and said 1D1F was not fit for purpose and they've thrown it away. They just give it a bad name and they throw it away. And you are looking for even a superior replacement. They don't get one. Remember they came, they said gold for oil was a bad idea. They've thrown it away. They've not replaced it with anything that saves us. In fact, first they said that there was no gold for oil program. Everybody in this country recalls. We invited the governor of the central bank. I put a question directly to him. How much oil was imported under the gold for oil program? And he got his technical people to run the numbers and tell us that at least about 1.7 billion Ghana cedis. Sorry, about 1.7 billion dollars worth of oil was imported. So that earlier propaganda that there was no gold for oil fell flat. It was a lie. But they'll tell this lie to the Ghanaian people, and if you don't take care, you'll believe it. Then they now come to, first it was LIMS, the software
for running the
health services in the hospitals. And they came with all sorts of stories. So all you had was a minister showed up and said something and said because of that he has cancelled it. Then the company also came up and said something. You were expecting, and I know people have filed motions in Parliament, you were expecting that, for example, Parliament will call for a probe into it. These should be admitted, for example.
And Parliament hasn't.
I know that people have filed motions requesting for a probe into LIMS.
Right.
Because as you sit here, how do you know that what the minister is saying is true?
Well, we believe that it would go through the usual investigation procedures.
No, you see, we have now gone into a culture where investigations don't even matter. The ministers of state come on TV and convict you through press conferences, etc. So here you have the minister on his own, not backed by any verifiable data, telling you that Zipline was being used to deliver nets and condoms and other things. Then you have senior officials in government repeating it.